but to displace themselves or seek refuge for themselves in India. Most of us will never witness their suffering firsthand or even meet a Rohingya person in real life. Their lives and experiences might feel woe to us or simply beyond our capacity for understanding. Who among us has ever visited such a refugee camp, let alone lived in a one? We may be able to imagine what it's like to experience what the Rohingya have experienced, especially given the excellent documentary footage that exists. But at the end of the day, most of us only know the Rohingya as two-dimensional figures on a screen or words in an article. For this reason, the lives of these people are reduced to statics and headlines, beyond the reach of an tangible empathy. The Rohingya are at a risk of becoming theoretical, like suffering abstracted from our lives. Further and perhaps even more alienating, whether we do or do not act. Most of us will never see the result. However, this should not matter. In his essay, Feminine Affluence and Morality, the philosopher Peter Singer claims that if it is in our power to prevent something very bad from happening without thereby sacrificing anything morally significant, we ought morally to do it. This allows no scope for emotional or physical distance, since it makes no moral difference if the person in need of help is a friend living in your home or a stranger on the other side of the world. The fact is that there is the moral obligation to prevent what is bad and promote what is good.
Participant, really sorry, you have a point of.
Yes,
Yeah, would you like to take it up?
yes, sir.
Okay. Participant, you can ask the question regarding the same.
Okay, so you made it pretty clear in your speech how you feel about the refugees and
Is her voice breaking only for me?
No, no, no. Participant, your internet connectivity is unstable. Can you please turn off your video and ask the question? I think that'll be much better.
Does she have an option of posting it on the chat box?
No, it'll take a long time for her to type it in. She can.
Okay. Okay.
am I audible now?
Yeah, much better. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, go ahead.
So yeah. So what I wanted to ask Mr. Narendra Modi is that earlier he vilified these immigrants as illegal Bengalis, and on his visit to Myanmar, he said that he supports Myanmar and its socio-economic efforts and its efforts towards peace and national reconciliation. So why does he suddenly want to host the refugees?
Go ahead.
Hello.
Well, I guess there might be a change of thoughts. There are certain situations in where those Rohingya refugees, which go through a lot of process built by our government, might have legal documents with them, but we we say that no, I'm not getting the word, but we do not allow them only because we think that Rohingya refugees get everything illegal documents. But some of them do go through a lot of procedures, through go a lot of functions in our built by our constitution, and that is why they get every legal documents, Aadhaar card, everything, and that is why I guess which having the legal documents are supposed to be allowed, and we can always host such Rohingya refugees or such person who goes through a lot of effort building legal documents only to get their home in our country.
Okay, thank you. You can.
Am I allowed to cross question?
No, you're not. Sorry, participant.
Okay, that's okay.
So may I continue?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
And Singer continues, if we all fulfill that obligation, no one would go without support, but there is a lack of support. It doesn't stand to reason that relinquishingly doesn't all personal wealth via checks to UNICEF is always the most effective method of supporting an international crisis, nor is it the most persuasive call to action. For the Rohingya, this is especially the case where the ultimate goal is their repatriation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Points have been noted. Is there any point of order or a point of personal privilege that the opponent team would like to raise? Okay, no. Thank you so much. We'll move on to the next presenter. The leader of the opposition party, you're ready to present. So
Yeah, I'm ready. Okay, when you start the timer, can you give me a count?
You can go ahead. We'll start the time accordingly.
Okay. Don't be too generous. Not everyone deserves your kindness. Good evening, all the honorable members. I, Purva Khare, would like to speak in the opposition of the motion that India has the moral responsibility of hosting the Rohingya refugees. The Rohingya, who numbered around 1 million in Myanmar at the start of 2017, are one of the many ethnic minorities in the country. Rohingya Muslims represent the largest percentage of Muslims in Myanmar, with the majority living in Rakhine State. The Rohingyas who fled to India after violence in the western Rakhine State of Myanmar have settled in Jammu, Hyderabad, Uttar Pradesh, Delhi NCR, and Rajasthan. India refused to let the refugees enter their country because it posed national security threats and the reasons which I would be putting forward. Union Home Minister Mr. Kiran Rijiju had said in the parliament that according to available data, more than 14,000 Rohingyas registered with the UNHCR were staying in India. He had said that around 40,000 Rohingyas were staying in India illegally. Adding background to their history, these are the same Rohingyas who approached Muhammad Ali Jinnah with a request of merger of Rohingya-dominated areas into Pakistan. Rohingya leaders had approached Jinnah with a plea that they may accommodate them, but the Islamist Pakistan Jinnah had rejected Rohingya plea, avoiding possible British annoyance. As far back as 1971, when India was burdened by 10 million refugees fleeing the fire and steel of a marauding Pakistan army, the Indira Gandhi regime of the time took a political decision to shelter the helpless humans. A pact was signed with Bangladesh in 1972, the Mujib-Indira Pact. It was operationalized to send the refugees back to an independent Bangladesh. Neither the Indira-Mujib Treaty nor subsequent efforts by successive Indian governments to fence the 4,096 kilometer long Bangladesh border were able to control the inflow of immigrants. While India's border with neighboring countries are highly militarized and restrictive, the absence of an immigration policy causes its security forces and the political parties in different border states to look the other way when dealing with the phenomena of illegal and unauthorized migration. There is, of course, a political dimension to it. Depending on the religious affiliations, they serve as an electoral interest for vote maximizing parties.
There's a question.
Yeah, you want to take up the question, participant?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Opponent team, you can go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to ask the question of the leader of the opposition that you said that there was a a treaty signed, which was called the Indira Refugee Treaty.
Indira Mujib
I
Pact.
would like to tell you, Indira Gandhi was the first one to invite the Rohingya refugees to India as Bangladesh was an independent. And from that moment, Rohingya refugees got their way to India. Your take on that?
See, Indira Gandhi might have even called them to India or may have spoken to them in a very humanistic way, in a very humanity perspective. But she may not have called so many refugees that would actually increase the population of India in such a way that the resources which are so less in number will have to be shared with such a big number of people. And yes, of course, I agree to it that Indira Gandhi might have called, and even that we do have Muslims in our country. I'm not denying that fact that Rohingyas or any other, we have so many refugees other than Rohingyas also.
Okay.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you can continue the same. You can continue this.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah. In addition to this, ISIS and Al-Qaeda, most South and Southeast Asian extremist groups have already been linked to the latest Rohingya crisis in some way. For example, there have been media reports of hundreds of terrorists from regional countries training for terrorist operations in Myanmar who are linked to Rohingya community. The Rohingyas, who are revered in India as innocent and hapless, are just another group of veiled terrorists who at the right opportunity would massacre every person not from their community in their path. The quintessential practical example of this vindictive nature of Rohingya is the recent massacre of innocent Hindus of Myanmar in 2017. Amnesty International in 2018 reported that Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army, the militant testing wing of Rohingyas, massacred up to 99 women, men, and children, as well as additional unlawful killings and abductions of human Hindu villagers in August 2017. We already know that India is a very populated country, and adding more and more refugees will only make matters worse, as we already know that there is not enough space for people to live. If we accept that the Rohingyas can be hosted in India, then more and more people will be lured to take shelter as refugees. And when there are more people than the space available, people will have to live in slums and conditions that we cannot even imagine.
Okay, participant, I'm really sorry. Your time is up. Also, opponent team, if it's a point of order, if it's a point of personal information, I'm sorry, Arshit, you cannot raise your hand because it's went past the 4-minute mark. You can only raise your hand between the 1 to 4-minute mark.
Sure, sir.
Yeah, really sorry. On the other hand, if your team has any point of personal privilege or a point of order that you would like to raise, please note the same.
Sir, we cannot. I actually wanted to raise a question to the leader of the opposition.
No, Shivatmika, you can only raise a question only between the 1 minute and the 4-minute mark. If it goes beyond the 4 minutes.
Actually, I did raise my hand, sir. I did raise my hand, but nobody noticed. I did.
Shivatmika, the thing is, you raised your hand once and the answer was given. After which you cannot raise another question. We didn't see you raise another question, rather to say. So we won't be taking it under consideration. Please note that before the 4-minute mark, if you have to raise regarding the same, please do so and notify that. Thank you so much. We'll move on to the next speaker. If we can have the lead member of the government on screen, the floor is all yours. You can start presenting the same.
Yes, sir. Yeah, so good evening, everyone. I am Arshit, the member of the government, and today I'm going to make my words proof.
Yeah, sorry, but
I have a point of personal privilege. Can I keep my camera
yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
switched off until my speech because I have low bandwidth?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, sorry, participant, you can start from the very beginning. We're sorry for that.
Sir, I can start again.
Yeah, you can start from the very start.
Okay, sir. Yeah, so good evening, everyone. Today I am Arshit Verma, the member of the government, and today I am going to make my words proof that the India should host the Rohingya refugees. So India sparked the panic among its long-suffering Rohingya refugee population by deporting a family of 5 to their home country of Myanmar, where they will most certainly face human rights violations and imprisonment. This expulsion came on the heels of the controversial forced repatriation of 7 Rohingya men. For Rohingya refugees currently residing in India, who the authorities' names are as many as 40,000, this second deportation seemed to harbinger a frightful pattern, especially as India's far-right government had previously pledged to deport all Rohingya. Ruling party officials have made such threats despite international law prohibiting states from refoulement, sending persons to the nations where there is persecution. In Myanmar, such persecution is a near certainty. More than 7 lakh Rohingya fled to Bangladesh after an army crackdown more than a year ago. UN officials have described the Myanmar military's action as genocide and called over government officials to be prosecuted. The United Nations and many other right groups and international bodies still deem Myanmar unsafe for repatriation. In response to the latest deportation, Rohingya refugees eager to avert similar fate began pouring from India to Bangladesh. Bangladeshi authorities estimate over 1,300 Rohingya refugees have left India and sought refuge in its territory within the last month. Most recently, 31 refugees, including 16 children and 6 women, were left stranded on the barren no man's land along the India-Bangladesh border for 4 days after Bangladesh denied them entry and the two nations failed to agree on what to do with them. Eventually, India arrested the group on January 22. Like others apprehended as illegal migrants, the detainees will likely face lengthy jail terms. Such imprisonment violates not only India's own law but also international law prohibiting arbitrary arrest and detention, as well as customarily recognized right to seek asylum. Yet this pattern of behavior the current Indian government has displayed towards the Rohingya, it is hardly surprising that many Indian officials emboldened enough to routinely violate international and national legal norms with immunity when dealing with Rohingya refugees. Rohingya also face increased surveillance at times, going as far as harassment, with officials repeatedly collecting biodata, fingerprints, and paperwork. In areas where the police are most hostile, like Jammu and Haryana, refugees fleeing to other parts of the country or to the Bangladesh report extortion, arbitrary arrest, and detention. And beating are also on the high. In light of all these abuses, many Rohingya are trying to their best to assimilate. Some manage to adjust their appearance and even learn Hindi well enough to pass as Indian, and as a result face relatively less harassment in their daily life. Few others who still hold a card and have been able to secure steady, relatively reasonably paid work also manage to get by. Yet even these relatively privileged in India lack full protection and they do not see a path.
Participant, I'm really sorry, but we have a point of information. Would you like to take it up or would you like to continue with your speech?
Sure, sir.
Thank you so much.
I would like to ask you, you've stated that Rohingyas have been facing torture and they've been facing harassment in different countries. And so why do you think that it is the moral responsibility of only India and not any other country? Even any other country can help them and provide them with basic necessities. Then why do you think it is only India which is responsible for the harassment and the torture that is happening to them?
So can I answer?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
So firstly, I have not stated that India has the only responsibility of hosting the Rohingya refugees. It is the responsibility of all countries, but today's our debate motion is that India should host the Rohingya refugees, and that's why I am in the proposition of it. And I think that India should host the Rohingya refugees.
Okay, continue with your statement.
Okay, sir. In light of all these abuses, many Rohingya, sorry, sir.
Go ahead.
Yet even these, sorry, sir. Thousands of less privileged Rohingya, on the other hand, continue to live in a state of fear, deprivation, and debilitating uncertainty while facing daily harassment, discrimination, and persecution. Recent deportations have brought some attention to the serious dangers that still await Rohingya in Myanmar and encourage the international community to take a stand against the forced repatriation. However, the world also needs to pay attention on the plight of Rohingya still living in India. The Indian government appears intent on following dangerously in the footsteps of the Myanmar authorities, intentionally fomenting religious nationalist fervor and placing thousands of already traumatized Rohingya in a state of constant fear and deprivation. If we don't act now and pressure the Indian government to reverse its divisive, chaotic, and dangerous policies, Rohingya will continue to be victimized by the aggressive nationalism and Islamophobia in yet another country. So I stop here and I think that I have made it true that India should host the Rohingya refugees. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Points have been noted. Is there a point of personal privilege or a point of order which the opponent team would like to raise? Okay, thank you. With that, we move on to the next speaker. Member of the opposition party, you can present whenever you're ready. The floor is all yours.
And sir?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, I'm sorry for that because at that time after the question, I just literally forgot that where I had stopped, so I was a little confused.
That's
sorry,
fine.
sir.
That's no issues. Okay, presenter?
Can I start?
Yeah, you can start.
Good evening, honorable members of the House. In what the United Nations has described as a textbook example of ethnic cleansing, the Myanmar military carried out a deadly genocide on Rohingya Muslims, sending thousands fleeing from the horrific humanitarian crisis. An absolutely heartbreaking tragedy, no doubt. And while we, a strong, secular, sovereign nation, shall try our level best to help these poor victims, we cannot afford to host the Rohingya refugees on our own soil. As the Parliament, our first and foremost responsibility falls to the well-being of our own people. We must ensure that the demographic pattern of India is not disturbed. We are an overpopulated nation, and the supply of resources is already dwindling. If we were to host the refugees, they would be living at the expense of Indian taxpayers, not only reducing the value of an honest Indian taxpayer, but also increasing the burden on our own government. Do we really want to host thousands of economically unstable immigrants and jeopardize the needs of our own natives? Moreover, over the past decade, long before the latest military crack,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah.
One of you, Shivat,
I want
So can I ask?
yeah, go ahead.
Sir, I would like to ask a question that if we were to deny ourselves pleasure in life, such as the arts, on the grounds that they are a waste of resources, then in what kind of a world would we live? You are talking about the taxpayers. It's just not about Rohingya. We are also talking about the people who are not paying tax in our India. And I'm talking about the living from the birth of India. What about that? What about those who are not paying taxes like every year?
See, I'm not attacking the poverty-stricken people in our own country, but we're already an overpopulated nation. Our resources are stretched thin. We do not have the capacity to house more immigrants. If we have more people in this country, there's no way that we'll be able to feed them all and house them all and give them shelter. And like the leader of the opposition said, eventually we'll end up living in slums and terrible conditions. And I mean, we need to be a strong nation, a stable nation first before we can, reach out and try to help others and refugees. I'm not saying that.
Sorry, participant, you cannot re-question another statement. Once a POI has been raised, it's been considered that.
So I just need a follow-up, just one.
No, I'm sorry, you cannot raise your hand. We cannot allow that. That will be considered.
So can I continue?
Yeah.
Okay. Moreover, over the past decade, long before the latest military crackdown began, the Rohingya have been trickling into India, fleeing army excesses in Myanmar, where the 1 million minority Rohingya population, mostly in Rakhine, have faced discrimination for generations and have been denied citizenship rights. There are an estimated 40,000 Rohingya currently residing in India.
Participant?
Unfortunately, India... What?
Would you like to take up another question or would you like to continue?
Okay, I'll take up another question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I would like to ask that you said that we are an overpopulated nation and we should not host the refugees. But tell that the refugees which are currently residing in India, and if we put at least I would say throw them out of the India, so how will they live if they will not get in a country to live? And who will take the responsibility of them if they die?
See, the refugees that we have currently housed, I feel that while our resources are stretched thin, we are managing to do justice by them. Okay, they have shelter, they have food, and they're able to live in relatively good conditions with good healthcare and other amenities. So they're living in an okay condition. I'm just saying that we are already an overpopulated nation, and considering the refugees that we've already taken in, we are beginning to become stretched thin. I'm not saying we'll throw out the refugees that we already house.
But it is against our
we cannot take in more refugees because we're already stretched thin.
Okay, thank you, participant. Arshad, I'm really sorry, you cannot re-question the same thing or you cannot re-answer yourself. Participant, you can continue with your statement. You still have
Okay. Okay. Some of the Rohingya pose serious national security ramifications and threats. And there is valid proof that some of them have links with Pakistan-based terror organization and Islamic states. I'd like to clarify here that I'm not declaring all Rohingya to be radicalized Islamic extremists, but some are. and the rest are economic immigrants that we just cannot afford to help. But instead of looking at what the facts and figures clearly state, it's apparently being insinuated that India is against Rohingya because they're Muslims. And that is absolutely not true. India is home to the world's second largest Muslim population, and a large number of legal migrants, irrespective of their religion, live and work in India. We just cannot allow illegal migration into our territory. Okay, now I'd like to address what our moral responsibility supposedly is. So it's not that we do not sympathize with Rohingyan refugees. We have done what we can within our capabilities. But we also have a moral responsibility towards our own citizens. You're arguing about their human rights, but what about the human rights of our own citizens, the welfare of our own people? We have not housed the Rohingyan refugees. We have housed some Rohingyan refugees on our land, but we cannot house anymore. However, we have extended tons of...
No, you can continue.
Can I continue?
Yeah, you still have 50 minutes left. 50 seconds.
Okay. So while we have, so we have extended thousands of tons of aid and relief material to Bangladesh to help the refugees. And we've been urging the Myanmar government to address the crisis through humanitarian means. In January 2020, the UN's top court ordered the Buddhist majority country to take measures to protect the members of its Rohingya community from genocide. We will support them and this order. Primarily, we can all agree that Myanmar is a dependent nation. So if they refuse to comply, we can employ punitive sanctions and arms embargoes against them. With comprehensive economic and trade sanctions in place, Myanmar would undoubtedly help rehabilitate the Rohingya refugees, take care of them, and start on the long road to right their wrongs. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Points have been taken. Is there any point of order or a point of personal privilege that the opponent team would like to raise? Okay, thank you so much. With that, we come to the end of the first half of the debate. Moving on to the rebuttal round. Just a few points of notification before we get started on the rebuttal. Please note that participants will have 4 minutes each to present their statements and rebuttal. There won't be any point of information that can be raised during a rebuttal. There can only be a point of order or a point of personal privilege that can be raised after the presenter is done presenting. One other statement is that no new facts can be brought into light in terms of rebuttal. All the facts that needs to be discussed during rebuttal needs to be inside the purview of the debate that we've had as of now. That would be all. Can we have the leader of the opposition party start the rebuttal? Whenever you're ready, the floor is all yours.
The Rohingyas who fled to India after violence in the western Rakhine state of Myanmar have settled in the various states of India, and to be honest, in some of the very densely populated ones. And as I've mentioned in my speech also, that as per the latest data, only a few percentage of Rohingyas are currently registered with the UNHCR in India. Out of the thousands of Rohingyas and rest are illegal immigrants who've taken shelter in Assam, West Bengal, and Jammu and Kashmir. Talking about the terrorism, in a communication to all the states, the Union Home Ministry had said the rise of terrorism in last few decades has become a serious concern for nations as illegal migrants are prone to get recruited by terrorist organizations. Also, India is known for its cultural diversity, and we already know that the Rohingyas have a way different culture than ours. So there is a possibility that they may not get along with our culture with the culture of our country and may end up having issues with it. I am afraid that one day these trivial issues may just lead to a big conflict, giving rise to communal riots and causing disharmony in our country. And also, if by chance they penetrate deep into our roots, then they may just claim to be the ethnics of our country and may even demand citizenship. And once they get the citizenship, they might even overpower all the other communities and make India a nation which will no longer be recognized for its varied culture. If once the number of the refugees increase, then it will be very disadvantageous for our country, because then it will have more people to manage and feed. And also in situations like these, when the economy is going down to a very big extent, these people will prove to be the liabilities of the nation than the assets. And as far as the morality is concerned, the morality should be standard for every country in the world, isn't it? The way our country's refugees are being treated in other parts of the world. the inhuman conditions they are facing, and the unlawful murders that are happening? Should India be inconsiderate to those and just ignore those facts and keep hosting more and more refugees each day? The fact that they are living on our taxes, sharing the resources which are not even enough for our own country people, and then poverty, hunger, scarcity, value of taxpayers, terrorism, and many such factors have to be considered over morality and kindness. And also, when we have known the fact for so long now that we do not have enough resources to meet the demands of our own country people, and that in that case of scarcity, if we are going to try and be over generous and accommodate more and more people each day and each year, then it is not going to be a virtue of kindness, but an act of foolishness. And when India is already battling with so many issues, don't you think that it should first focus on resolving those issues? And it is a saying that you should be strong enough to stand on your own feet before you let out a helping hand. Hence, I would like to conclude that hosting Rohingyas in our country is not our moral responsibility, and that if we do so, it is only going to prove disadvantageous to us. Yes, morality has to be considered, but should we forget the morality when it comes to our own citizens? By doing any favors to any human which proves disadvantageous to your own country's citizens, is that what you call morality? This is the food for thought for everybody. Think over it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, participant. Points have been taken. Is there any point of order or a point of personal privilege that the opponent team would like to raise? Okay, fine. We'll move on to the last speaker for today. The Prime Minister, floor is yours. You can start whenever you're ready.
Thank you, sir. Recent interview regarding the Rohingya crisis, the ethicist Kwame Anthony Appiah frankly points out that though the government of Bangladesh alone does not have the power to force Myanmar to repatriate the Rohingya, the rest of the world certainly does. In his own words, no country can survive the concentrated opposition of the entire international community. Instead of undergoing intense personal sacrifice, we should orient our efforts towards petitioning our governments, our own governments, the institutions which have the power to enact real change. The base level of support we all should be obliged to fulfill is the rigorous lobbying of representatives. The cost of the individual is minimal and the effect is maximal. What are a few hours of your time compared to the potential betterment of 1.3 million lives? Those who have the capacity to donate can make an immediate and positive impact on the Rohingya, who need both long-term and short-term support. Financial support should not be shrugged off in favor of bigger, systematic solutions. It should be considered in tandem with those solutions. Furthermore, individuals can take measures such as speaking with or writing to their elected representatives to take certain concentrate action. For example, demanding UN Security Council enforcement of judgment reached by the International Court of Justice this January that Myanmar must have the immediate measures to prevent genocide against the Rohingya community, protect all evidence relating to allegations in this case, submit compliances reports within a certain time period as long as the case is ongoing. To give maximally should be to contribute your fair share. However, not everyone's fair share is equal. There are many people whose financial position confers on them a great moral responsibility. For some, their fair share might not exceed lobbying Congress or others. It might encompass substantial donations to relief programs. If the amount one ought to contribute becomes apparent, it's a matter of intuition and personal awareness. It is not necessary to forsake our quality of life in order to fulfill our moral obligations to Rohingya. However, it is necessary to do our fair share, and most of us that encompasses more than what we are doing now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, participant. Points have been taken. Is there any point of order or a point of personal privilege that the opponent team would like to raise? Thank you so much. Okay, guys. With that, we finally come to the end of this debate. I had a lot of fun and we heard a lot of interesting points from both sides regarding the debate. Thank you so much for taking part. The judge, if I'm pretty sure you have a lot of comments and suggestions to make regarding the debate as well.
Firstly, thank you for participating. I feel like I learned a lot as well. There are only certain things that you have to work on. One is how you engage. Like it was for some parts of it, like they started out well, but it felt like Monday morning assembly where you're reading out news. So make sure you're not doing that. But apart from that, was very well researched, and you guys did put an emotion to the topic, and it is one such topic where you can't just you know throw out facts. You have to bring in emotion, which all of you did, so I appreciate that. That's all.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Thank you so much for taking part. We'll keep you notified regarding the results if you've gone through the round of 16 to the round of 8, which is quarterfinals. Take care, stay safe. Thank you so much for participating in the event. We had a lot of experience, and we hope you guys had a lot of positive experience as well, taking part in the same. For me, it's really exciting to see school students taking up such a controversial topic, doing adequate research, and presenting the same at such a professional front. And I'm really happy to see the results of it also come on screen. So great job, all of you. Have a safe day. Take care. And we'll keep you updated regarding the same.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Welcome. Participants, you can leave the meeting room.